Okay, so in this video we're going to be talking about strings. Strings are a different data type that we just haven't really worked with so far yet. We've only been working with numbers, numbers like fractions, decimals, whole numbers, integers, things like that. But Racket allows us to work with strings. Now what strings are basically a bunch of characters put together. So I can say, hello world. And this is a string and it represents it as a string. If you think about it, these are characters, an H, an E, an L, the space, all of these other ones, and then they're put together in a string. And how Racket knows when the string stops and ends is when you have this quotation mark over here. In fact, you can even put a quotation mark, I believe, inside of a string by escaping it. So now I can print hello quotation mark world. That's interesting. Anyways, the point is that we can write these characters into strings. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be trying different kinds of functions that we can work with on strings. The first one I'd like to talk about is string append. So if I do string append, I can actually give it any number of string arguments, but they should all be strings. So if I give it hello world, you know, Racket is cool. So this is 3 arguments, and what string append is going to do is it's going to take all 3 of them and turn them into one string. And just to preserve spacing, I'm just going to do that. So if I run this, it says hello world, Racket is cool. And notice that it didn't actually put in spaces, it only put in spaces because the spaces are there in the actual strings. For instance, there's a space right there and a space right there. If I take those spaces away, then the formatting's kind of weird, like this. Another thing you can do to fix this issue is to actually just put in a string as a space. So you see this, it's kind of hard to read, but this right here is a space. And the same thing can be done over here. So now it just has a few more parameters, but it prints out nicely. Okay? So that's one way to work with strings. Another thing we can do is we can find the length of the string. This is pretty self-explanatory. Actually, I might as well just use it over here. I can do string dash length. Wow. Of this. And since this is going to be one string, this should work. And we'll get back is 27. I don't really want to count it out, but it looks pretty close to it, because let's see, 5, 10, this is 6, that's 16, and then Racket is 6, that's 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27 for the 2 quotations. Okay, so everything seems to work. Obviously, string length will not work on 2 strings, because it expects 1 argument. At least I think it does. Hello. And then world, see, you can see I'm giving it 2 arguments. It should, it only expects 1 argument. Okay? So only give it 1 argument. And then there's substring. Substring is a very interesting kind of function. What it does is it takes a string and then gives you back a smaller string that's inside of the one you gave it, with specific beginning and endings. For instance, if I do substring on carpet, and I want to start at character 0 and stop at character 3, oops, then I'm just going to comment this out because I don't need it anymore. This gives me car. And you might be puzzled as to where the string starts and stops with regards to these number values. There's 2 ways to think about it. For instance, one is to think about this spot right here, and you're counting these. Like, this is the 0, this is the 1, this is the 2, this is the 3. And if you think about it, it cuts at this 3, and it also cuts at this 0. And then it produces the string in between them. Another way to think about it is that you start at character 0, so 0, 1, 2, and then 3. This character is the the beginning of the string that's not going to be in the final substring. So anything including this and after is not going to be in the substring. To give a better example, maybe we can say, this is kind of lame, but a carpet. Okay, so now the actual substrings that's going to be produced is going to be the A, a space, and the C, because this is the character at space 0, 1, 2, and then after A, everything is sort of cut off. So if we run this, we get A space C. Okay? Now let's say we wanted the car again. What we would have to do is we would say, well, my string starts at, 0, 1, 2. So we would change this to a 2. And instead of ending at a 3, we would go, well, this is the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We want it to stop everything there. So if I do this, then I should get back the car. Okay? And this is how substring works. Alternatively, you can actually just omit one of the parameters, and then it just gives back everything after that. So it goes A, like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and everything after. Okay, so that's like shortcutting. If you give it 0 parameters, it's going to be sad. It's going to say, hey, I need at least something to make a substring. Okay, so make sure you give it some parameters. Alright, so the last thing we can do is we can check if two strings are the same. This returns a boolean value string equal. Let's say hello, and then hello. This should give back a false because even though the E, L, L, O are the same, the H and capital H are not the same. If I do this, it gives back a false. Okay, but if I change this to an H, everything's fine. Okay, it gives back a true. And the cool thing about strings is that you can compare them. For instance, if you were ever to look in a dictionary, you realize that all the words are sorted in increasing order for like they're sorted alphabetically. And here, this should give back a false because hello is not less than hello. And this is what happens. Alternatively, if we give this, I'm pretty sure capital H comes after. Okay, fine, capital H may come before. So then this should work. So capital H comes before lowercase h, and that's why this is less than. So if I do, apple, and we can just leave that as hello, this is true, because A comes before H, alright? And then if you do something, for instance, like apple and app, this also works, because app is simply shorter, and then LE comes after. It's like rounding, okay? So that's what we can do with string less than. Strings are pretty useful. We're not really going to be doing any functions with them right now. This was just sort of a introduction to what we can do with them. Okay? See you in the next one.